Rappin with ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey, what's happening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rappin with ReefBum. I'm your host, Keith Berkelhamer. So, on today's live stream, I welcome back Mok-Yi Chow, also known as the Inappropriate Reefer. What's happening there, Mok-Yi?
How's it going, Keith? Thank you for the invite back. It's an honor. I have been following the journey of this podcast. You have some fantastic guests. I'm here to bring down the reefing IQ.
No, are you kidding me, man? I'll let you keep it real, dude. So it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
So if folks don't know Mok-Yi, he's a hobbyist, but he also has a very large following on Instagram and YouTube. How many Instagram followers you got right now, dude?
I think maybe 50K.
You sure it's not more than that? Might be more than that.
Maybe slightly more.
And it's YouTube, there. Big audience as well, right?
Around 60, I think, or 70.
Well done, dude. Well done. So before we get into the conversation here with Mok-Yi, I just want to thank the sponsors for the show, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Really appreciate them supporting the live stream, and I also appreciate all you folks out there that have been tuning in and are tuning in tonight. I see there's a lot of folks in the chat. So as per usual, would encourage you to ask questions, comments in the chat. We'll do our best to get to everything. And see there's a whole bunch of folks out there, familiar screen names and people. So I thank everybody for joining. So what's going on, man? What I know following your YouTube channel and your Instagram, there's been kind of some ups and downs with the tanks.
So much has happened. My life priority kind of changed. Right now I have two kids. The older one is 3.5. The younger one is 7 months. And it's just been crazy. In terms of Reef Tank, there has been ups and downs. I thought this podcast with you, Keith, is kind of like my triumphant return because like the last one, I was like, I'm starting an SPS. I don't know how it's going to go. I'm going to try all these high-tech gear. And up to maybe 3 months ago, everything was really great. SPS took off, and I was trading, selling frag locally. And we can get on to that. But last month, during a vacation, something happened, and most of my SPS got wiped out. but thankfully everything's kind of recovered, everything colored back on, whatever stuck around started growing again at a really good pace.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I saw the video that you put out. Can you kind of take people through what exactly happened if they don't know what happened to you? What do you think what the cause was?
Of course. So quick background. On my 145-gallon tank, I have 3 Radion XR30 Gen 5 Pros, right? And also on the sides, on front and back end, I have the AliExpress light bar, which fantastic light, great value. Honestly, I don't think any LED light bar can beat it in terms of values. So I have that set up for about 2 years. Things are going well. And you know the saying about when things are going well,
don't mess with it, man. What'd you do?
Oh man, I mess with it because I got the bug of like, oh, maybe if I do something, it'll get even better. Maybe just chasing that a little bit. It
always happens.
So here's where AI, fantastic company by the way, Ecotech and AI, same company now basically, approached me and said, hey, we got these new lights, AI Blade that's coming out. I was like, AI Blade? What do you mean? At first, I wasn't too interested because things are going well, and I'm like, But the more I hear about it, the more interested I am, especially with the form factor being strip lights. And right now, strip lights, panel lighting is kind of like all the rage. I'm like, okay, I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more. And I was really, really cautious, especially with all these blowback in terms of like content creators getting, say, free gears, and they may not be honest in terms of their experience. I'm really, really careful. Number one, I've worked with them before, Ecotech company. Things may be a little bit pricey compared to other competitors out there, but in terms of quality, usually is good. And also, it intrigues me. The AI Blade, I swear this is not a commercial. They have like different line. They have like the glow and the grow, etc. So I was like, all right, you know what? Let me try it out. I will swap out the AliExpress light bar and we'll try it out. So the light fixture itself, really beautifully constructed, and plug it in. The color rendition is fantastic. It got a nice white backing. It's a little bit wider than the AliExpress light bar that I have. The spectrum is also a little bit different. In the app, I think it's like royal blue, purple, UV, right? And the AliExpress bar, the spectrum is a little bit more narrow. I believe it's 420, 440 alternating. I'm not 100% sure. If Jim is in the chat, he'll correct me. So I didn't think too much about it. I have a power meter. I have experience, quote unquote experience. I say, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna swap the light bar in. I use the power meter to take the reading before and after. I'll make sure the power of the new lights is gonna be maybe like 10 or 20% lower than what I had before. So I set it up. Everything seems okay. The light, again, I love the way they renders coral. And again, this is not a design net. I think
you're digging the lights.
I like the lights. It is expensive, but yes. Now, a couple weeks later, things started to change. Some of the coral seems a little bit more paler, especially my favorite coral, the goldenrod and the copora. And for those of you who don't know, it is a SPS. That is like a nice solid golden color. And in some of my previous video and photos, it's like a big cluster right in the middle of the tank. It's probably like about this size, almost like a soccer ball size. And I was really happy with it. I pull frag from it regularly. So this is about mid-February, and I was due to go to Japan for 10 days with my family, finally, right? Pandemic is over. And about a week or two right before that, I started noticing the goldenrod starting getting more and more pale, right? The color started fading. I'm like, oh, what's going on? That's weird. Everything else seems okay.
This is after like 2 weeks of having the new lights going.
Roughly 2 weeks. And before that, honestly, I don't think I changed anything because I'm just too busy. The only thing I did was just kind of pull frags as they start touching each other. And here's the dilemma. At this point, I think like, something's going on. And if I have to guess, maybe it's the light, maybe it's too much light or something. The light changes even though I dial back the PAR value, or in is it PBFD or whatever unit it is. Even though I dial it back, maybe it's still too much. That's why it's doing this. It's stressed out. What should I do? Should I just cut the light back, or should I do a big water change? Should I just rehome this whole colony somewhere else? And keep in mind, this is like right before a big trip.
Yeah, how many days before the trip now?
2 weeks out, I started noticing a little bit of change, but I'm kind of like, okay, maybe something else. It's a nutrient. I started looking at different places. I didn't want to make any drastic change.
So you noticed the 2 weeks after the switch of the lights, and the big trip is 2 weeks after that, after you first noticed.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Now, the day before the trip, that's when things really start hitting the fan. I noticed it was pale. It's almost white. It's just like a tiny hint. Maybe it's so gradual I didn't notice, but it's like right before the trip, I was like, all right, let's take one final look. I'll do a video. Usually I do a video right before the trip, right? Just to kind of do a snapshot. I was like, dude, this is not right. This is so pale. What's going on? And I started noticing some of the outer corals started paling out a little bit, namely the Manipora cap. And usually when that pales, for me, it's either alkalinity swing, which I did not have any, or something else going on. So I was like, and at this point, this is like the day before the trip. Normally, if I have the time, I'll probably cut the lightweight bag, do a big water change to rule anything out, but I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm like, it is what it is. We're just going to ride it out. I didn't even set up a webcam to look at the tank. I don't want to see it.
You kind of knew what was going to be happening.
Can't do anything about it. Yeah. So 10-day pass. I came back. Goldenrod gone, all bleached out. Some of the outer corals, slime ball, half of it is like kind of bleached out. I have pink lemonades. It was growing, really started taking off, bleached. Malneficence, bleached. Golf bonsai, halfway up, gone. A lot of just
not good. A lot of dying. Not good.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I was jet lagged. I'm like, still got to do water change. So in the span of 5 days, I did 2 water change. And I sent out ICP test. ICP test, I'll just jump forward a little bit, came back clean, nothing out of ordinary. So the best guess I have is the light, even though I since saw the your podcast with Tulio, we'll talk about even though the power level matches, but the spectrum may be different. And in my mind, on top of that, I feel like the AI blade, a lot of people talk about how good the spread is. Maybe it's just hitting core in a different spot that's not used to. So it probably took out the goldenrod first. And then from there, it's kind of like a spiraling effect. I noticed the alkalinity jumped up. I normally try to keep it at about 7.5 to 8. It jumped to about 10.
Wow. Yeah.
I immediately
that makes sense.
Stepping back. Right. And that's something that I should know, but I did not think about. And I was in Japan, so I'm like, And the other thing that I actually did not notice is that nutrients, the phosphate, usually it's at 0.15. It jumps to almost 0.4, 0.5 at that point. I think it's 0.45.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah. Nitrate, I didn't even bother checking. I know it's going to be just off the chart. So from there, it's kind of like a reminder of how much that, even though, okay, you know these things are supposed to happen, but do you have the experience to actually check it and to act on it? It's just a whole thing.
So, all right, a number of things. First, let me thank Mike Lemming for the super chat. Thank you very much, Mike. The comments, love the stream. Keep up the good work. Hey, inappropriate! Exclamation point. Telegrams in the house there. A purple monster would be a nice rebuild. Mok-Yi's acro supply core. I just posted my colony of purple monster on Instagram, and it's like, and after I posted it, I was like, please don't ask me for frags because that's all that happens whenever I post something like, if you got the list, can you put me on a list or something like that? I'm like,
yeah, where's a wait list?
There is no wait list. It's just like it's crazy, but it's funny. So. John Wright, maybe too much lighting instead of keeping water stable. Maybe too much on lighting instead of keeping water stable. So the question I have for you, Mok-Yi, and sorry if I missed this, but when you did the comparisons in terms of the par, so your main lights you didn't change out. You just basically changed out your LED strip lights, right?
That is correct. The Radeon lights program, everything stayed the same. I basically took out the front and back light strip and just slapped the AI blades on. And then I par match and then dial it back, so that the actual par reading is down.
So what do you think that was, man? Because you're scaring the shit out of me because you're you're gonna do me a solid. I'm gonna return the favor when you're ready for some frags, but you're gonna send me your par meter because I'm switching out the halides in my 187 gallon tank for the GHL Mitras. And I need a par meter, and you're so very kind. Thanks to Telegram for connecting you and I on the par meter thing. I had no idea you had a par meter, but so I'm a little nervous because it's something where I want to make sure. I know that the meters are going to be a lot more par, so I'm going to have to definitely dial it down. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be par matching myself and probably going like 20% below. But what makes you think that it was the lights, given that you did par match and went a little bit lower?
Well, Keith, the reason I thought it's a light is because number one, I have one big colony of the goldenrod onychopora in the front, and I have another one all the way in the back in the shade. That one was okay, completely fine. And all the coral that started dying is like right in that cluster right under the light. So that's kind of like first. And I think the other SPS, the Echoporas, may not be as much light shocked as more the alkalinity spike and the nutrient spike. I think it is the Echopora because they probably cannot handle as high light as quickly. That probably went first, and then it caused instability in the system, whether it's bacteria, whether it's a high nutrient, whether it's a less alkalinity uptake. I think that causes the second die-off, which is the rest of the SPS.
Right, and so do you think it was the spectrum in terms of the difference in the spectrum of the strip lights that you swapped out?
I cannot honestly tell you. If I have to guess, that may be it, because the AliExpress light, it's pretty narrow in terms of spectrum. The AI blade, I know they have a chart out. I have not really studied it, but it feels like it covers a broader range.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because the program I'm going to be using, which Jim created for me a few years ago for my Peninsula tank for the Mitras, it's a spectrum. I'm going to say the word mimic, and I know Tulio's probably not watching, but he corrected me last week when we talked. I said, and I have been saying that the Mitras program in terms of spectrum is mimics the 400 watt 20K halide bulbs, but as Tulio correctly pointed out, you cannot mimic that exactly. So I should say that it's at a close approximation in terms of the spectrum. So I think that's a good thing. At least I'll be able to kind of I'm playing around with my main lighting source here, so I will be able to dial that spectrum in, and so perhaps I'll be fine. But yeah, it just kind of makes me a little bit nervous. But dude, like everybody, this stuff happens to everybody, in terms of a tank crash or losing some corals and what have you. What so besides large water changes, did you try to do anything in terms of, I can't recall in the video, did you do an aquabiomics test and all that stuff?
I did. So aquabiomic test, I did it before. I think it's at the end of last year. I actually sent one in. It took a while to come back. My tank diversity is super excellent. I think the point was like 400 some points. But I also have a bunch of like different like pathogen and stuff, of course. When I saw the score, I was like, okay, you get all the good stuff and bad stuff, I'm sure. But that really didn't, I feel like that didn't really play a factor for a long time, because the tank was doing excellent until instability comes in. Then that's when everything kind of hit the fan. In terms of stopping the second die-offs, actually, Jim, I think he may be in the chat, he mentioned that he experienced something similar before, and he heard people using antibiotics in the tank, which I had been just trying my best to avoid, simply because of like all the things I heard about not using antibiotic, just in case they build up like tolerance down the road just for human population. But at this point, I'm just like, okay, you know what? I may just lose the whole tank, or things are going real serious. Let's just go ahead and try it out. It's kind of like a Hail Mary. So I did 3 doses of Cipro. I forgot the exact dosage, but it's one of the Jim and Lynn probably have it. But I did Cipro in the tank, and literally, I think the second day it just stopped. The die-off stopped, so it worked. So whatever it was, maybe it's coincident, maybe not. But at this point, I'm leaning more towards that. Okay, something the antibiotic stopped it, so it could be bacteria.
I'm showing the video you sent me, Mok-Yi, of the tank right here, and it's looking nice, dude. Nice rebound.
So this from yesterday. It's been about a month. So they did recover really quickly once I gave them the proper condition. Granted, like I mentioned, I did use the antibiotic to kind of stop the die-offs of the SPS. During this whole time, the LPS and softies were not really affected.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep. And the fish are all totally okay.
Right. Yep. So you were able to save a good chunk of that goldenrod.
Yeah, well, it actually grew a little bit, which I'm happy to report. The chunk that died was about 3 or 4 times that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in that bare spot. But the thing that actually hurt me the most was actually, besides goldenrod, the second one would be the Goth bonsai. The Goth bonsai sat in my tank for about 1.5 years doing nothing. And then about 9 months ago, it just started sprouting. It pulled a little bit, started sprouting up, and started growing really, really well. Shoot straight up. Because with that, I felt like I finally understood. Because I was talking to Richard a long time ago. Richard Beck, we were talking about like coral placement. He was like, yeah, just let the goldenrod grow. You can just chop it off and just let the golf bonsai shoot straight up. At that time, I didn't know what he was talking about. But now after seeing the golf bonsai, the grow formation, I was like, oh, that's what it is talking about. And I felt like that's kind of like 1 foot into the SPS Keepers Club. But that had been ripped away.
Yeah, no, it's, it's good. It's when I had my issue with the, the coral pathogens in my peninsula tank, I was getting some colonies that had some STN. I had one colony that RTN'd on me, but I had several colonies that were STNing, and it's tough, right? I mean, well, so I'm watching this happen, over like a couple of month period. You're like in Japan, like knowing what's going, all the bad stuff that's going on. But so this is kind of like something that I was watching for a while, and I have some theories in terms of why the STN was happening, but that's neither here nor there. So what happens is like you see like all of a sudden a little STN like in the middle of a colony, or you see like part of the base starting to STN. You're like, all right, let's just hold out hope that this thing will tomorrow it'll stop receding and things will turn around and it'll be fine. Do like some large water changes and what have you, and try to nip it in the bud. But you know what? In my experience in all these years with SPS, once you start seeing a little spot of STN, a little bleaching of the coral branch or something, you got to like act on it. You can't just And so the whole thing is like you got this big beautiful colony, right? And you don't want to like take this big beautiful colony and start hacking it up to try to save pieces. But that's really what you got to do, in my opinion. Maybe others have different experiences than myself, but yeah, I mean, in my peninsula tank, I waited too long for a few of the colonies to pull them and start hacking them up, but I did save every coral in that tank that was impacted by the STN. So, kudos to you for being able to salvage the pieces. But I do have a Garf bonsai that I am growing out, so perhaps I could hook you up once it's ready to be fragged.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Yeah. It's tough though, man. It's like these are like your little pets,
Yeah, it's weird. Like before going to SPS, I was like, oh, okay, SPS, great. But like once I start seeing them grow and see the coloration and especially the growth formation, that's something I'm really into. It's different. It's different, but I get it. I get why people love them.
So I'm seeing in the chat here, Mok-Yi, that we've got some conversation going on about the PAR meters and what have you. I see Paul, Great Beard Reef, Mike Lemling. The club has a 4 Apogee MQ510 for borrowing. So that's the Boston Reefers Society. I guess that's the PAR meter that club has. What PAR meter do you have, Mok-Yi?
That's the same one I got too.
The same one.
Yep. So I can definitely send it over. And if you have buddies that need it, just keep it there for a little bit. I'm not switching my life for a little bit.
I'm in the middle of nowhere, dude. There's like nobody near me, so.
Okay. Well, maybe they're just like reefers in the wild that you don't know about.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different options, I guess, for PAR meters. It's it's something that I've only rented one in the past from Bulk Reef Supply when I started my peninsula tank. But it's a good idea, I think, in terms of just being able to have a baseline.
Yeah, there's a new product coming out that I'm kind of curious about. I think it's called PowerWise. It gives you the power as well as the spectrum. I feel like that would be helpful. I don't know much about it. I just remember seeing it recently, and I would love to learn more about it too.
So, dude, let's take a look at your softy tank, because this thing just kind of blows my mind, and it's a beautiful. The mangrove is like going nuts.
I got lucky. At one point, it was dying. I didn't know what's going on, but thankfully, a lot of people gave sound advice, and I ended up putting in root tap. End up dosing a little bit of iron, but I think it's root tap that kind of saved it. It's probably running out of nutrients, even though I dose liquid fertilizer into this tank directly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just use well, in the back of my mind, it's like softies. They can probably handle it. And I use Thrive Plus. from my planted tank days, and I got some Trader Grow as well. Trader Grow should be safe, but Fry Plus that I'm not sure about simply because it's for like freshwater planted tank. But I went ahead and squirt them in. So far, it doesn't seem to bother anything. But at some point, I think it's still not enough for the mangrove. So I just start inserting root tabs. And root tabs is those little, almost look like little pills with like fertilizer pellets. Just jam them in the sand. But again, this is just me going off a couple of comments because I'm not sure what's in the root tab itself. So if you have a more delicate system with more sensitive creatures, may not be a good idea. But for my softy tanks, definitely working out.
So what kind of light do you have over the mangrove?
I actually have a Ecotech Radeon G4 Pro.
Oh, really?
I have on. Oh, sorry,
over the mangrove. Yeah.
So, okay, all over the mangrove is a Spider Farmer grow lights. I think it's like $150 or so off of Amazon. So any plants grow light would do. One thing I would say that is that if I ever do mangrove in a reef tank, I would definitely give it its own dedicated light.
Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, unless you're getting some natural like sunlight coming through the room, which can cause problems. But dude, man, that those clownfish, do they have enough like water in that tank? It looks like it's
That's one of my worries, and I think somebody recently commented, it's like, oh, clownfish have no place to swim. So the clownfish originally came from the 135, and I noticed in the 135-gallon tank, they just kind of stick to one small area, which happened to be my hammer corals, and they are kind of just loving the hammer corals to death. I was losing heads. So at that point, I was like, okay, you know what? The mangrove tank, it's pretty empty, got soft corals. Let's see if the clownfish would jam with these soft corals, especially the finger leather. It looks kind of like anemones. So I put them in and they love it. They just, for the most of the time, just kind of stick near the leather coral, just swim among the tentacles. It's only when I'm right in front of the tank, they know food is coming. They'll come right in front of the toadstool. That's where I usually feed them. And they'll just pretty much almost like swim halfway out of the water, just waiting for the food to come in. But so far, I think they're okay. If at some point I feel like they're running out of room, I will definitely put them back into the 135 because I feel like right now the hammer coral, they've grown to a size where it can probably withstand the loving from the clownfish, so it should be okay.
Right. So they were originally in the 135, right?
Right. And that's ironically the whole reason I wanted to upgrade my 45-gallon cube tank. I was like, oh, the 45-gallon cube, I want to give my clownfish a bigger space to swim. Little did I know, once they go in the big tank, they just stick it that one corner as well.
Oh, is that why you got rid of them? Because they were just kind of in a corner, not too visible? Is that...
Well, they are visible, except they are just going in and out of the hammer, and the hammer is just suffering. The euphyllia got in stuff.
Interesting.
Well, not euphyllia anymore, but...
Are you going to put some more clownfish in the 135?
No, that's it.
No, really?
Unless I come across a beautiful pair of white margin. I remember back in Hong Kong, the Fish Street, there's this pair of clownfish that I saw twice. I went back to visit, I think like after 1 year. So both times I went visit, I saw this beautiful pair of white margin clownfish. It looks almost like a quirky clown, except the fins are more flowy and the color is more striking.
How do you spell that? I've never heard of that.
Just white margin, WHITE. Margin.
Margin. White margin clownfish. I have never.
Yeah, I think it's a type of lat.
Oh, okay.
LAT
yeah, I see what you're talking about.
From Madagascar.
Yeah, cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I saw them in person. I'm like, these are gorgeous. I would make an exception for those.
Are they pretty, tame and versus with other fish? Are they well behaved? Because I know some clowns can be really aggressive with other fish.
These ones, I don't know.
Huh. Yeah, I love clownfish myself. I mean, I have the same kind that you have. I think yours is a nicer pair. The Mocha Vinci.
Mocha Vinci.
Yeah,
yes.
I have a pair of Mocha Vinci. My original plan was to have 2 sets of clownfish in my 225-gallon Peninsula tank. That was like my plan was to have, and I did have 2 pairs of clownfish, but I have a pair of Mocha Storm. I've got I've got one Mocha Storm and I've got one Orange Storm. So they paired up, which is really cool. And then I had what did I have? Did I have another pair of Mocha Vinci? I can't recall, but really weird because I never lose clownfish, but I lost those 2 clownfish, which was a real bummer. But I have another pair of Mocha Vinci in one of my frag tanks, and I was going to move them into the Peninsula tank, but I'm like, the other pair of clownfish have been in there for a long time. They're established. They don't really they kind of hang out in in one side of the tank during the day, but then at night they're sleeping on the other side. So I'm like, sounds like, seems to me like they're pretty much got the whole tank covered, which is not, you would think in a 225-gallon tank you could pull it off. And I was pulling it off, but I don't know. It's just
no sense risking it, right?
No sense risking it. So yeah, I do love clownfish though. I think every tank I have I got a pair of I can't recall the name of they're really really neat pair in my other display tank. So it's and they haven't spawned though in a while. They were spawning, but now they haven't been spawning, which is kind of odd behavior, I think.
I've been waiting for mine to spawn. I mean, these guys are, how old are they? Close to 7 or 8 years, I think, and they have not spawned yet. So that's also why I want to move them up to the smaller tank. Thinking maybe like too many activities in the big tank or in the cube tank. Maybe just by themselves here they will spawn. I don't know. They're doing their dance. They're doing their little shaky dance after so long. So maybe something's going on.
They could be getting into the groove. A couple of comments here. Doghouse Reefer Cipro has saved me a lot of money. It's great for emergencies. Chris, ACI, what's happening there, Chris? Don't get Lats clowns unless they are TR. TR.
Is it tank raised?
Tank raised. Hey, you know the lingo more than I do, Mok-Yi.
I wonder. I'm curious why. Is it just hardiness or is it legality or? I'll ask him later.
Maybe he'll drop a explanation in the chat. Monster Yoon, what are you guys willing to pay the highest for acros? What's your limit there? What's the highest you would pay for an acro?
At the moment, I think like 200 maybe. Simply because I'm not confident that I can keep it alive. My tank is a little bit unique in the case where the nutrients is high.
So what are you currently at in nutrient wise?
Typically 0.15 phosphate, nitrates 20 or 25.
That's high.
Usually, yeah, it's high. Usually when SPS enter my tank, they turn brown or the color just turn green or something. It usually takes about a couple months for the color back up.
Have you tried some tester frags since the incident?
Let me think. I have not SPS, but I have added LPS and softies.
What no problematic algae, right? Your tank is fine. No like cyano or anything, or sometimes
they're a pest, but not algae. Cyano, algae, none of those. Those are okay.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of tanks you can keep. A lot of tanks you have high nutrients and all that stuff. And if you don't have any problematic algae, like any cyano or any like hair algae, and then I usually just think that certain reef tanks can handle high nutrients.
Yeah, it's just like the new coral come in, they may be in for a shock. Like, oh, what is this place? My goodness.
Reef Keeper, my highest cost acro was a home wrecker from ReefBum. It's doing great and was a great price compared to many other online. Well, thank you, Reef Keeper. Yeah, what's my limit in terms of paying for an acro? I might have gone up to 400 for something. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, You gotta I think my advice to people out there is spend what you're comfortable with, but unless you have a very mature system and you've had success with the acros, then there's a lot of great corals out there that you get for a very, very reasonable price. Like Milka Stylo is probably one of the most gorgeous corals out there. And, stylophores in general are a lot more forgiving, I think. But, you can get frags for like $20-30, from people like, locally, I'm sure. And so there's a lot of classic corals too, SPS corals that used to cost an arm and a leg that are now $50, $60.
Right. Yeah, and I think like buying locally has been a great way for me to find like more affordable corals as well. Just even the same corals, just locally. And I mean, I think promoting this is okay too because it's not really taking business away from actual online stores, right? Because just like a hobbyist, how many frags can they produce? So I feel like it's okay.
Yeah, and so you're part of the local DC reefing club, right?
Yeah, WAMIS. Great club, great people.
How have you guys started back with in-person meetings, or are you still doing the Zoom thing?
I think we have done 2, which I have missed, unfortunately. The next one, I believe, is next month, actually. And Mark Levinson is actually coming to speak,
cool.
which is great. Yeah, I haven't seen him in so long.
Yeah. I met Mark at the Magna in Milwaukee. Great guy. Enjoyed meeting him. Yeah, local reef clubs are so important. The moderator, Paul, is the president of Boston Reefer Society. And yeah, just I went to their frag swap last November, and it's just really good to get back into it and just see people, after COVID and all that stuff, and that all the conferences and the reef club stuff was on hold. It was really nice to kind of see people again in person.
Absolutely. And as well for I think I speak for a lot of content creators. We're so glad that we can go out and visit other reefers, go to events, and just kind of film and chat and swap and just do all those. We missed that for the last 3 years. So,
dude, you've been kind of busy, right? You've been talk to us about where you've been. I've seen some pretty incredible local Andrew Sandler's reef. What was that like?
Oh man, mind blowing. Except I made the mistake of bringing the kids.
Oh no, really?
I shouldn't say that. So to Mr. Sanders' credits and Rashid, they're super patient, super kind, right? They're like, yeah, kids, we love kids. Come on in. Education's over.
Kids must have been like, what the hell is this?
I was expecting my son to like get his jaw dropped because like he's really into ocean lives, into like fish, shark, octopus, all those things, right? But I think like he just kind of sees it almost like a public aquarium at that point.
Yeah.
He's so interested. I was like, I'm like, okay. But anyways, it was for me personally, it was it's strange. I saw the tank so many times online, but seeing it in person and then just learning the operation behind it and seeing what happens behind the scene, because we got to walk through the back. And he showed like one thing that kind of stood out is that as soon as we walk in, there's a little panel on the ground that Rashid opened up. And when you look in, it's just this big cave. And supposedly they keep the water or something in there. But if somebody falls in, they cannot get back out. They kind of crawl back out. So it's insane.
Sounds like a trap door.
The whole setup is just crazy. And when you actually go downstairs, you see the side of that container. The whole thing's insane. And Lynn, who may be in the chat right now, also went. So she can probably speak more to it as well. But it's a really insane experience. And I feel really lucky to be able to see this in person.
Yeah, I was supposed to visit last fall, but I couldn't. I had to reschedule. So I'm hoping in the very near future to swing by, and next time I'm in the New York area to check it out. Yeah. So go ahead.
Sorry. And they have a really interesting collection of fish as well. There are a lot of fish that I did not know about, and
really?
just I've heard name off. Yeah, I was like, oh, what is this? How? And the main thing is like, how much did that cost? I know it shouldn't be a thing, but that just mind blowing.
Well, yeah, my understanding is that there are some rare and exotic fish in that tank that you're not going to find in another, private aquarium in the United States.
Right. And just one thing to their team's credits, it may be easy to give off the appearance that, okay, maybe they just have money, just hire people, just pay for whatever, right? But they actually do know their stuff. They really do care. And I think they're honestly out there trying to make a difference and make some changes. Just want to put it out there as well.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. They're, Andrew, Rashid, and the whole team there. They're awesome, and it's great. I think their whole thing is basically education and helping, the reef keeping community, helping, the young people out there that are interested in this sort of thing, get a better understanding of, the whole reef, ecosystem. So it's a great thing in terms of what they're doing, the whole mission. So yeah, kudos to them.
Right. And just to kind of cap it off, it's also really interesting for me to follow their journey, simply because I've always imagined, okay, if I have like huge budgets, what would the hobby be like for me? So I'm kind of living vicariously through them as well. So it's been a really interesting journey.
John Wright, only 37 likes, yet 102 22 watching. Yeah, come on, people. Let's get busy and hit that like button. Let's get those likes up. So so they have more than just the 17,000 gallon tank, right? Did you get a full tour in terms of all the other tanks in the house?
Yes, 2 other tanks stood out. One is a tank that is unfortunately sitting right next to a 17,000 gallon, so everybody kind of just walk by it. But they have a really cool Hawaiian amphibious that's really huge with a lot of scullies down there.
Yeah.
I like that tank. That's really interesting. I love that fish, even though it's kind of like, but the fish is interesting. They also have another really interesting tank in the back with a lot of mushrooms. I saw some really expensive angelfish. Also, really beautiful tank. And at that point, I feel like any fish in his collection could be kind of like a centerpiece and a talking point for a whole video. But the fact that he put so many together, that unfortunately they all just kind of blend together for me. I'm just going to blur.
Yeah. So of all the tanks you saw there, what tank, if you could replicate that sort of setup, what tank would that be?
I would do the one in his office. That's the one to talk about with a lot of mushrooms and some angelfish in there. Mainly because of the size. I would not do what he did, 17,000. Even if I have the money, the manpower, the willpower, I would not do it.
You had a staff to help you?
He does, but you still have to kind of manage the staff. He's still making all these decisions, and that's on top of his day job. I would not want that. And we don't even need to talk about the 17,000 gallon. If you ask me, if I were to kind of just scrap all my tanks and just start one, what would I do? I would not go larger than 100 gallon. I would most likely go with a 93 gallon cube, or like even a smaller 60 gallon cube. I would do one of those. I want one water change to make a impactful difference versus having to like do buckets of them.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, I when I started up my Peninsula tank, that was like my second system, and so basically for me the maintenance has doubled, since I started up that tank, and it's a lot of work, man. It's like, when you have like one system or one tank, whatever it is, it's like you're doing one water change, you're dealing with like maintenance for one tank and changing out calcium reactor media or whatever you're doing with that maintenance, but now you're multiplying that by 2. So it's and I've got like in one of my systems, I've got 2 frag tanks plumbed into that display tank. So I've got like three tanks is on one system, and I got 2 tanks on the second system. So it is 5 tanks, but it's 2 different systems. So I didn't want to go for 3 systems because I just don't have the time to do all that stuff and run a business and all that sort of thing. It's I'm a one-man show, but it does take a lot of time in this hobby, right? I mean, you really, and you got 2 young kids, man. It's got to be that's a juggling act at this point, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, I even thought about taking down the mangrove tank. That's
Really?
a 17 gallon, but it's so low maintenance that I thought, okay, you know what? Let's just leave it running and see how it does. And it runs perfectly without me interfering. The only maintenance I do on it is sometimes I scrape the glass, and then I'll do water change on it maybe every 2 or 3 months and feed the fish every day, which I enjoy anyways. And that's pretty much it. Super, super low maintenance. And I think down the road, I'll probably look more into it. 2 years back, when I started the 135 gallon tank, I tried to go high tech, thinking that having technology, having controllers will help me maintain the tank. I'll spend less time on it. So I went through this. It's not true. And we can get into that if you want, but I definitely have my thought in terms of what's the right amount of automation.
Yeah, go for it, man. I mean, what have you found to be kind of the sweet spot for you?
I think for me, the sweet spot is that I would like to have monitoring and maybe fail safes. For example, if a heater fell, I want it to let me know and then shut it off. But in terms of adjusting dosing based on test results, I would definitely not do that. I have not done it. In terms of a lot of other automations besides auto feeders, I don't think I need it. Like any dosing adjustment, I have an app. I can, if I see the reading. Let me back up a little bit. In terms of auto water tests, I am currently running a Algatronic, which I absolutely love. I tried the Mastertronic, which I felt like I spent more time trying to get it tuned in than it helped me save. I'll rather just pull out my test kit and test the elements, which may not be fair because for me, I'm not keeping as close a watch on my nutrients and calcium and magnesium. Other people who may have business to run, they want to make sure everything is on point. That may work for them, but for me, alkalinity checking is perfectly fine. I have my temperature check using the hydros. I have my pH checked using the hydros as well. I have a 2 pH probe just for fail-safe, and Algatronic also have a pH probe in there. And I feel like that amount of monitoring is enough. If I see the alkalinity run off, I do 3 tests a day. If I see it start trending up, maybe I'll watch one more day, and then I'll go in my app, I'll tweak the doser's dosing to kind of dial back a little bit.
Yep.
For dosing, I'm dosing Kalkwasser at nights. So usually I use that. Before the crash, I need to do Kalkwasser and then also 2 parts supplements because my Kalkwasser dosing kind of outpaced my evaporation rates. Yep. But right now, we're at a point where we don't need the 2 parts. I'm just doing Kalkwasser. So any adjustment, I just adjust the Kalkwasser and that's it. So I think for me, the sweet spot is pretty much monitor pH, monitor temperature. If I have SPS in the tank in a reasonable amounts, I would do a alkalinity auto tester, whether it's Algatronic or something else. But beyond that, I feel like for me at least, it's a little bit overkill.
I'm in the same camp. If you walk into my sump room and look at all my stuff, you might be like, wow, man, that's a lot of stuff going on there. But I'm in the same thing in terms of like, I just like to do the monitoring. I don't like to do the controlling with the monitor. I've got the GHL KH director and when I was dosing 2-part, a few years ago, I did fiddle with the control aspect of it, but I just I kind of felt like I don't check it enough in terms of where it it's all like on the app and all that stuff, and you can do all the charting and stuff. But I like to walk by it and kind of like see what the numbers are, and so it's kind of difficult to see a trend. So it's to me, I think it's a lot of people do it, and a lot of people do it very successfully in terms of doing a lot of controlling with their their stuff. But I think it's great to be able to have some stuff in place where you can make sure that things are not going to one extreme versus the other, and if they are, then you can kind of like step in and make the correction yourself manually, which makes me feel more comfortable as a reef keeper.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of things that could go wrong with a lot of automation. I don't know if you do automatic water changes; those scare me.
Oh, I do not.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what I do. I use a wet dry vac. The way I do water change is I go down to the sump and just kind of suck out maybe like 5 buckets full of those 5-gallon buckets
really?
And just dump it out. Yeah, and then I would actually I have a Brute trash can. I think it's like 45-gallon or 35. I'll just use a little pail and just flush the water back into the refugium on sump, just like flush the things out. So I'm still kind of manual that way. Not smart enough to do those auto water change, right, where some people just push a button and everything's done. Maybe down the road, but at this point, right now, I feel like what I do, it's good enough. And usually I don't do water change that often. It's I don't really do maintenance water change only when I notice something's off. Then I go in, or if I notice the sump is really dirty, then I was like, okay, let me just change out a little bit of water, and I'll use this chance to kind of siphon out whatever's down there.
Well, you're doing like the Reef Moonshiners method, right? You're doing monthly ICP testing, and then you're using the Reef Moonshiners elements to tweak along the way. Or is that am I off base there?
No, you're right. Okay. I am doing ICP about every 3 months.
Okay.
And then I just tweak the major elements, minor elements as needed, and also do the daily doses. And so far, I like it. And a lot of people kind of just ping me as like, hey, he's doing Reef Moonshiner methods. And yes, I am. I'm still doing it. And I do really notice a difference when I started on it. Before I mentioned SPS coming in the tank, they were brown for a long time. Like these days, they're brown for about 2 months and then they color up. But back then, they were brown for half a year. And then I started doing this. 2 weeks later, things started turning into the appropriate color. And that's why I was like, okay, tank was missing some kind of trace element.
Yeah, folks, if you're watching and you got some brown corals and you're thinking of chucking them, or brown SPS, don't, because they are not dead, and they can absolutely color back up. I have a BC hyperberry. My colony just kind of like browned out on me, so I fragged up the colony and I saved some pieces, and one of those pieces went into my display tank, the 187-gallon display tank. And it was brown for a while, like a couple of months. I'm like, man, oh man, this is ever gonna, like, you know, I don't know what happened, but it just colored right back up. So you never know. And
same thing with Goniporus. I have some that was just angry for the same thing, half a year. It just never really extended. It just kind of there, not extended or shrunken up. But eventually they came out and they're one of the largest corals I have today. So give them a chance.
Yeah. Looking at some of the chat here. Angel's Reef. Mok-Yi, do you think your tank crash related to the grade of kalkwasser you're using? Impurities built up. I don't know. I think it seems like you pretty much established that it was probably the strip lights, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I thought about it too. But then the ICP came back clean. I understand that there are things that ICP may not detect, but the fact that the other goldenrod colony is completely fine and all the other corals seems to be fine until at that point lead me to think that maybe something else. And if it is the impurity, then it should still be affecting the corals right now.
Chris C, ReefBum, if you heard any whispers about the GHL Ion director, I haven't gotten a recent update in the last few weeks, but I do know that they were running through some final tests with the what do we call that? The ion sensor, I think that's what it's called, and so they're pretty close to getting that back into production. That's my understanding, but I got to get an update on that. Farm Frags, I guess this is directed to you, Mok-Yi. Who introduced you to Moonshiner?
Is it Farm Frags? I think a few people did it at the same time, but Farm Frags did too.
Oh, Farm Frags.
Thank you.
Farm Frags did.
I think he did. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing something similar. I'm doing Captivate Aquaculture. So I'm doing monthly ICP testing, but I'm dosing traces and minors from Captivate Aquaculture. So it's a similar concept. It's a I'm getting ICP test results. There, Chris Wood has a spreadsheet on his website, and I just pop the values from the ICP test into this spreadsheet, and it'll tell you where you need, in terms of how much you should be dosing. Over like if it's a 30-day period, how much you should be, dosing to make the corrections, and whether you're deficient or over elevated. So it's I like it a lot. I've noticed some big differences myself in terms of corals being happier.
No, I think this is excellent. I feel like we kind of, as a hobby, we kind of smoothed out the whole keeping corals, making sure corals survive for most people. SPS, alkalinity, right? We kind of mastered that. Now we're starting to figure ways to, level them up with trace elements. We're looking into that. We're looking into bacteria, which I thought was really interesting too.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about bacteria. Chris ACI, my hyperberry did the same thing. So I sent Chris my frag of the hyperberry. I know it browned out, Chris. Are you telling me, Chris, that it colored back up too? I don't know. That would be interesting. Wacky. Go ahead.
Yes. I know you guys are brewing something for antibiotics.
Okay. Yeah. So
when is that coming? I'm not trying to get the source or whatever, but that sounds like the perfect thing. Because one big reason I have been so resistant in terms of using Cipro is because of the whole everybody stay away from antibiotic. But based on some of the podcasts you did in the past, it sounds like whatever that you guys are using seems to just be mainly it's just the koi folks that are using it.
You're talking about the oxalinic acid.
Yes.
And there's a couple of folks out there that reached out to me. Well, a lot of folks have been reaching out to me about it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm at this point my whole position is, so Chris Meckley is very involved, Julian Sprung is very involved. There's a whole bunch of research. There's a university involved. So there's going to be a whole study, and maybe when I get Meckley on, and I think it's in June, he could talk more about it. So there's going to be a lot of research behind it, hopefully, that can provide a really good blueprint in terms of how to, if you need to treat a tank with it and how to do it, the protocol. Because right now there's a protocol out there, but it's not, it's anecdotal, right? And there's just been people that have been doing it, and there's a belief that it's been working, which is good, but there's a lot of variables in play. And I think the thinking is that want to learn a lot more about it before you start making this a widespread type of treatment out there in the reef keeping universe. So, I know Reef Moonshiners, there's an RTN STN protocol for treating RTN and STN. I think that's been out there for a while. I don't know much about it, but it seems like people have been using it. I know Mike Paletta successfully used Cipro, but I think he really nuked his tank with it. I don't know what protocol you follow for Cipro, but it's we talked a lot about this on past live streams with multiple guests, that treating a tank with antibiotics is that's not something that you should really just feel like you could do, and it's a big deal, right? Because you could screw up a lot of stuff with creating different strains of bacteria in your system that could be resistant to antibiotics if you keep hitting the tank and hitting the tank and hitting the tank with it. So it's really fascinating stuff, but it's also something that I think for many reef keepers should be a last resort. So it's really cool though, because it's like a whole new frontier.
Right. It's I just can't wait. I just can't wait to see what you guys find. And to be honest, I was kind of worried when Mr. Jake Adams passed away. I feel like, oh man, like who else is gonna carry on this kind of more scientific side of the reef keeping hobby? Is it all gonna be about hype corals? This is cool, but it looks like part of it is still going on. The science behind it is still being carried on, which is excellent.
Yeah, Jerry Harkey, thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate it. Mark Clark, got to look after that biome for sure. It is something that is very precious in a reef tank. A lot. What's the impact of ChemiClean? I don't know. People use ChemiClean to nuke cyano. I've used it years ago. I haven't used it recently. So, that kind of scares me. Fluconazole, that's an antifungal type of medication. And, when I had Julian Sprung on, he seemed to be, saying that seems to be a good solution for bryopsis. There's a lot of different things we can put in our reef tanks,
Yeah, this kind of remind me, the whole Vibrance fiasco.
Oh yeah. Did you use that?
I did. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, there's this period of time. I was trying to introduce clams into my tank. Keeps dying. I was like, what's going on? How come? Like, what is it? At the end, I just kind of wrote it off. It's not until the whole news came out about what Vibrant actually is, how it potentially affect clams. I was like, oh, okay. I did 2 doses of that. So ever since then, I'm kind of hesitant in terms of like new products coming out. I wait for reviews. I wait, like new product I'm not going to use. I'm just going to wait and see first. And try to find credible sources, which based on your chat with, I think, Mr. Matt Peterson last time about like AI and stuff.
How do you determine? Man.
Oh man, that's great. Like it's almost like tapping into different sides of not even just the hobby.
I got fooled by that a couple of days ago. I was like scrolling through like YouTube, and I saw this YouTube short of a gigantic great white shark washed up on the beach. And that was AI.
Yeah. That's the future.
Yeah. So
that's the future. Right?
So go ahead, man. I interrupted you.
No problem. No problem. So I started like this past year and a half. I just started kind of reviewing how I get my information. How do you determine that this source is a good source of information? Number one, of course, I have my go-to people that I trust. I know they know their stuff, right? They've been around. They have successful tanks. They have successful coral business, which to me is actually really important. If you're like your life is on the line right? These are essentially your income. Of course, you do whatever you think is best. Like those information that came from them, I'll definitely give them more weight. The next up would be like, okay, how does this person's tank look? Is it just that one tank? Because if it's just one tank, maybe he just got lucky, right? He just did not encounter all this issue. But if you have multiple tanks, it doesn't matter if it crashed at some point, because each time you crash, I believe that you learn something. But can he rebuild to that point where it was successful again, what I deem is successful? Then, okay, his comment probably weigh a lot more too, because it's been there, he's done that, he proved that he learned something so he can be successful again. So I started kind of reviewing these. And it's interesting because I know you guys really downplay forum, like forum information, because everybody can hop on there and put comments in, right? But at the same time, I also find a lot of useful information from forum as well, because there are good nuggets of information mixed in with the bad. It's just a matter of like, can you distinguish them? And I think down the road, AI should be able to, just like Google PageRank. They can some way rank each of these answers and present them in that order. And I feel like down the road, AI should be smart enough to do something like that. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, it is scary stuff because I was really kind of not as aware about the impacts that AI could have on the in terms of editorials or in terms of content. Right, I had no idea that that sort of stuff can go on, where somebody can just use one of these services and write an article, have like maybe been in the hobby for a couple of years and put out a blog post about something, and it's all like AI, and a lot of it is bullshit that you can't and some people that are just getting into the hobby might read it and take in some bad information, but. Yeah, hopefully AI can be something down the road where it, the positives will outweigh the negatives.
Yep. And speaking of bad information, I also want to talk about influencer as well, because I think that has been brought up.
Well, there is a question. Okay, yeah, because I see a question from CVIN13. Who are your favorite Reef YouTubers besides each other? But let's get into your thing in terms of influencers, and then we can both answer this question.
Yeah, because this got me thinking, because I am the worst nightmare, educator's worst nightmare. I'm an influencer, right? I cringe at the term. I like to call myself like content creator. I don't want to influence anybody. This is the content I'm creating. But that's besides the point. Let's just use influencer. I started thinking, okay, what's the difference between the content we put out versus something that goes into the magazine? And it sounds like the main difference is the vetting. Right? They come from people with actual knowledge. They have been vetted. They have spent time to kind of review this. So I thought back to when I was doing weekly videos. What's the difference? The difference is that I started creating things in real time. I'll use example of amino acid. Amino acid in past, I was like, oh, everybody's using an amino acid. It must be something good, right? People are raving about it. Let me add some amino acid too. And then that week, I'll put a video saying that, hey, I'm using this brand's amino acid in my tank. Things look awesome. Little did I know, 2 or 3 weeks down the road, things start dying.
Things didn't look so awesome.
Yeah, I was like, what is this? Got to be something else. Must be the light, right? Maybe it's salt. So I was like, no, this can't be it. This can't be it. So later on, I walked by the bottle of amino acids. I got a nice big bottle. I was like, let's try it again. First week, things look great. 2 or 3 weeks later, something dies again. It's like every 2 weeks later, one coral would die. It could be LPS, so it's strangest thing. This happened 4 or 5 times until recently I tried it one more time. There's no way. This time I have a small drop bottle. I tried again, same thing happened. So my conclusion is that, okay, it must be feeding something in the tank. Maybe these other folks have success with it. The nutrient level is really low, or whatever. For whatever reason, just jam with the tank. The tank loves it. Where my tank already have all the amino acid, whatever they need already. Anything else I put in is probably feeding something bad and it's taking down my corals. So in terms of content creation, this is when people see that, oh, this guy is using amino acids. His tank looks decent. Let me try it too. So this is where the kind of like the bad information come in. Versus these days, what I do is that I have a whole story first before putting out a video, because I'm no longer doing that weekly videos. So I see the whole cause and effects, at least when I feel like I have some kind of conclusion, then I push it out. So I feel like, at least for me personally, in terms of being an influencer, that was one of my biggest disservice to the hobby is to kind of record it in real time, but did not clearly state out that, okay, you know what, this is not tried and true. I know sometimes I do try to do that, but I feel I could do a much better job versus so letting people know that this is still experimental, versus I'm much more comfortable doing things the way I'm doing right now, where right now I'm having Euphyllia eating flatworm, which is a whole different thing we can get into, that hitchhike into the tank. So for the last month or so, I have been dipping the corals once or twice a week, all the torches. And for the most part, I don't see anything else, but I'm going to keep dipping for another month or two. So I feel like I give a more complete pictures and show more of the process versus that, oh my God, I got Euphyllia eating flatworm. This is what I'm going to do. Don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll find out next week. So I feel like showing the whole picture is probably a little bit better as an influencer or content creator versus, just
kind of going shooting from the hip. What do you say? You're just kind of like shotgunning it in terms of
shotgunning it and bringing people along, like encouraging people to shotgun it with you.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's so true. I mean, there's just so many things. I kind of similar thing for me. I just try to like talk about my reef keeping journey, but it's if I'm using a new product or a new piece of equipment or something, I'll really try to get away from making statements about that stuff until I've really had a good amount of time with it to learn it and to use it and all that stuff. It's tough. You really, it depends on what you're using, but it could be 6 months, it could be a year before you really know, can draw any conclusions about something. Let me first thank Reef Exotico by Luis Aceves. Luis, man, thanks so much. The comment is super chat. I can still hear Jake saying to me, before taking any advice, you should ask, "Show me your tank, bro. Be careful who you listen to. Respect." And the comments after that. Bill Saltwater Heaven, with you, Exotico, ACI Aquaculture, Reef Exotic, 100%. So I think that's a sound thing to ask somebody.
Absolutely. The thing is, like, the trap I fell into is sometimes I'll push an update out, I'll see comments. I'll get comments that teaches me exactly what I'm doing wrong and how I should do it, and it sounded really convincing. My English sucks, so when I see something is really well written, I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing. And then I'll go look at his channel, maybe as a video of his tank. And I'm not trying to put anybody down, but I'm like, okay, good thing I checked for. But there's some truth to it, right? Like look at the tank of the person giving advice and the history, and see if that's somebody that you want to learn from. And another thing is that not everybody is good at everything.
No.
So I know there's a whole mentality of you find a mentor in the hobby, right, and follow him. But I don't know. I'm not 100% in for that, because I feel like everybody has the strength. For me, if you want to do like a super easy tank, low maintenance, I've done many of those. Like during college times, that's all I have in my dorm and whatnot. But if you want me to do a high tech tank, definitely do not follow me, because that's not my strong suit. So I feel like everybody specializes in something. It's really important to identify what that person's good at as well.
So let's get back to this question. Who are your favorite reef YouTubers besides each other?
Right now, there are a couple. Just trying to think of like who I watched recently. Dream State's really good. I like her style of. Yeah, I forgot the exact name. Dream State, but she put on the show recently. Sorry, it's escaping me. But she's a friend of Zoa Tank Boys. That's how I found her. Zoa Tank Boys entertaining as well. But Dream State, I like her vibe, her style of presentation. I like Frag Box, because I feel like maybe I have a little ADHD as well. The way he jumps around and talk about different things and go off track, I love that. He kind of remind me of Fish FX, Travis sometimes, because sometimes you just pick up the camera and just roll with it. Like Travis doesn't jump around too much, but you have that that vibe where it's like, just like a buddy, just chatting. So I like Frag Box as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts this day as I drive kids around. Reef, Keith, I keep calling you Reef. Keith, I catch every single one of your podcasts. I really enjoy listening to all of them. I feel like each guest come on and bring on a different vibe. For example, the one with Mr. Julian Sprung and friend. So I forgot. It's Charles.
Charles,
yes.
Yep.
really educational. So there are guests like that, and then we have like the Reef Beef fellas that comes on, also educational, but it's kind of like I jump around. I jump around a little bit between the different episodes depending on what's going on. I listen to Reef Dork and Prestige Reef sometimes as well. So there's a lot of different reef aquarium channels. So I think these guys are the ones that I follow consistently. There are the ones that kind of pop up, and I'll just click in and see what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of pops up in my feed too that I'll click in. I mean, obviously, I think Jake and was certainly the guy that whenever I saw something pop into my feed that I would definitely be watching one of his videos. I really enjoyed him and Mark in Reef Therapy, and I'm so happy that that Mark is back in the saddle with those guys on Reef Therapy. So that's really cool that they're going to keep that thing alive. That's awesome. I do enjoy the Reef Beef podcast as well. I think they do a good job with entertaining, but I think they also get down to some nice some core issues that I think are definitely worth people checking out in terms of the content they're pushing out. Abe Coral Euphoria. I'm an SBS stickhead guy, so I think absolutely. He has some. Abe, you got to put out some more videos, dude. But he has some good content, and so I think it's good to have all these different content creators out there, and like you said, everybody's kind of like got their own little niche that they cover. So there's a little something for everybody out there, and I'm not brown nosing here, but the Bulk Reef Supply folks have some very educational videos. I think the good thing that they're doing, Matthew, is kind of like their beginner guru, which I think is awesome, because there's a lot of people, I think a lot of people that might be getting into the hobby might be a little bit overwhelmed. So I think it's great to kind of have the educational aspect for people that are newbies getting into the hobby. Yeah. So it's all good.
Absolutely. Keith, I want to ask you, have you ever started a reef tank for content?
The Peninsula tank build was something. Well, it was twofold. I needed to have a second system because I farm coral, I sell coral, and I wanted to have a second system to expand my collection, also to be able to give me backups, right? So corals that I had in my original system, I wanted to bank them in my second system, but I also thought it would be a great idea to do a series, a content series about that tank build, and I never really done that before, that organized. So that was kind of like, that kind of put me over the top in terms of doing that second system, because like I said before, for me, I knew it was going to be a lot of extra work, but it was it was a business decision. If I was not running a business, I probably wouldn't have started that tank in the first place, the second system. But to me, it made business sense to do that. As a hobbyist, would have I had that second system? Probably not. But I'm glad I did it, because it's now my favorite system.
That's perfect. Is that the system where you rip that, like you reset the tank?
No, that's my original tank in this house that I'm at. This is the Peninsula tank, which was brand new 2 or 3 years ago that I started. How about you, man? Did you have you done that?
I did. The budget tank, the one I built with like a 10-gallon tank, is the 10-gallon, $10, like from Petco Tank. So that tank, I thought it would be fun to just see if I can how cheap can I do it with like just hang on a back filter and just like a really cheap lights. I think it's called Aqua Light from Amazon. It's like $60 lights, and what I can grow on it. And it turns out to be one of the most popular series, because I guess even back then, reefing it's could be expensive. It could be seen as expensive, and this just to show that with this amount of dollar, you can get your foot in the door. Yeah, but I always wonder, okay, maybe I should do 2023 version of a slightly updated budget nano tank. I don't know.
Let me say thanks to Mark Vanderwald. Hey, Mark, I didn't know you were in the audience, dude. So I wasn't like trying to like blow smoke up your butt, but I was genuine in terms of what I was saying about you guys. And
wait, can I blow some
go
smoke?
Ahead.
Yeah, in terms of podcasts, I caught pretty much every single episode of the original Reef Therapy as well. I feel like at that time it was BLS, Keith, yours, and also Reef Therapy. Each have a really different vibe, and depending on the mood I was in that day, I go into like different episode and just kind of watch a little bit more. So when the whole change happened with Reef Therapy, I was a little worried. I was like, oh man, but it seems like it's off to a good start. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like, to me, Reef Builders, Reef Therapy brings the really scientific aspect of it with the use of the language as well. It's also really eloquent.
Yeah.
Which is strange. Again, my English sucks. That's why I really look up to people who can eloquently speak. So that really
you speak at least 2 languages. I think that's pretty damn impressive.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you know, I speak 1 language, so I cannot imagine trying to be, you know, I mean, I could not tell that, you know, that would not be your first language in terms of English. So you've assimilated very well in that sense.
Well, I appreciate it. But yeah, to me that was a huge. I was like, oh man, what's gonna happen? But I'm just really glad that carried on, and I can't wait to see where it lands in terms of the niche for Reef podcasts.
So we got some comments here. Shallow reefing, the skimmer deep dive on Reef Therapy is legendary. Yeah, that was like, I don't know if you caught that, man. That was like 2 episodes, and it might have been like 2 hours a piece or something like that. That was crazy, and haven't seen Reef Therapy is my go-to podcast for long road trips. Mark Vanderwall, love your channel, Mok-Yi.
Thank you.
Yeah. What was I going to ask you? Angel's Reef, Inappropriate Reefer. You need to upload more videos like you used to back. Weekly routine, please. So talk to us, man. What? Was the second kid kind of made you cut back a little bit. What's the future hold, Mok-Yi?
Okay, so it's 2 things. Number 1, I think the first kid already kind of cut me back a little bit.
I would think so.
I was struggling. I think the second thing that kind of pushed me over a little bit was like a while back, I uploaded a video about the cost of reefing, right? Mm-hmm. My whole point of that video was that you do not need expensive gear. There are expensive gear, which it works for some people, but you don't need it. Just seeing them online all the time doesn't mean that you have to get it. There's place for everybody. That's the point of that video. But that kind of blew up, and a lot of conversation was generated through it. And I just found it stressful, to be honest. And on top of that, I had the first kid at the time, and the time was like about 1. So I was like, forget it. Let me just dial it back. So I decided to just kind of no longer adhere to like a weekly schedule. I think I did just like freeform. I started out doing every 2 weeks and then 3 weeks, and it became a month. And now the second kid came, I actually found myself having a little bit more time, which is strange. I actually have a little more time now because I guess things don't get easier, but you get a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or maybe my wife got a little bit better and she was able to like do a majority of the stuff. So I was able to like just stay up at night and just do some editing. So I actually feel that my publish rate actually increased a little bit again. And it also it also has to do with the content as well. For the most part, pandemic seems to be over. So we started going out again. We started seeing people again.
Nice.
I was getting tired of keep just shooting my own tank, talking about my own tank. Oh, it was not fun. So just this past weekend, went to fish stores, saw Jim, saw Lynn, and just pick up some corals and stuff. And we got ACI's new king hammer. So there are a lot of contents right there.
Nice.
And on top of that, if we want to talk about my tank, I am battling the Euphyllia eating flatworms. I do have a lot of clips saved up, all kind of like just queued together. Video's almost ready to go. I'm just waiting for a logical ending. And we can also talk about like the yellow Fiji leather, how the color is slowly morphing a little bit. Thank you, Mark and Jake. So there are a lot more things to talk about. So it has a lot to do with the amount of content as well. I'm really trying not to force content, especially when I don't have time, when I don't need to. And now content just kept piling up, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I think it's it's not a good thing if you're feeling pressure to put out a video every week and you got to like come up with some content and it's forced. It's not authentic, and that's something that you know is going to kind of come across, I think, in the content that creators put out there.
Right. And I think one more thing that's kind of helping me stay the track as well is that, I'm not sure if you know this, but I started doing a little sponsorship. I know sponsor is kind of like a dirty word for content creators.
Hey, I'm sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. You know, they're right smack dab in the middle of this live stream here. So,
and I'm drinking from this. But here's my take. Here's my kind of like my cheat code. So my goal, number one, of course, equipment. If I have a new build, if like equipment that I have faith in come in, and I feel confident that there's going to be a solid product. Yeah, if I'm not bending if I don't have to bend over or whatever, give up like whatever I want to say. Like usually the companies in this hobby is really good about just letting you say whatever. If it's not one of those, then yeah, I'll take it. It's fine. But in terms of actual like money, I started working with sponsors that have nothing to do with the reefing hobby. So this way, there's no question that I'm being skewed one way or another because of this.
How did you manage that, dude?
They approached me.
Really?
So they approached me. Yeah. But I mean, these are not consistent. Once in a while they come in, and when they come in, I take it because I can use this fund to show, not to buy stuff for reefing gear, but to show my wife that, hey, the stuff that I'm doing is actually benefiting the family.
Yeah, you gotta try to, you know, that's like selling frags or something like that. You gotta try to like supplement the hobby that way.
Right. Supplement the hobby, and to be fair, once I get the initial build up, the cost of the hobby is not too much,
right? Which
is great. So any income coming in, I can use it towards like kids, toward family and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, this is why I'm not sleeping right now. I'm cutting this together so we can buy this later on. So I was like, okay, fine. It's actually kind of like a side business, but that's kind of like my side step too, in terms of I was like, hey, is this guy paid off? That's why I'm saying this. It's like, no, some of these stuff I actually have the money now to buy, and this is my honest opinion. For example, like the hydros and stuff, bought them. So the opinion is pretty honest, and if I do get something that is free, these days I just really clearly say out, okay, I got this for free.
So a couple of comments here. ACI Aquaculture, Chris Meckley, Mok-Yi, how is your king doing? He's talking about the King Quartz hammer. Is that what he's talking about?
Yes. So, Chris, great naming, by the way. The Royal Line. I like that. That makes people want to collect the whole thing. So that's the King, the Queen, the Princess, and the Dark Knights, I think. So I actually got the Dark Knights, I think it's 2 months back or 3 months. I forget. It's a while back. That's the first release. So Lynn, Reef Nerd Aquatics, is local to me. And sometimes, like when she gets some interesting stuff, she's like, "Hey, do you want to buy this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, yes." And she give me a nice little discount, and I just pay. And so I got the Dark Knights first. I was like, at first, it's not doing too much for me initially, but now it's starting to grow on me a little bit. I see a white ring coming in. I was like, "Oh, it's interesting. It's pretty good." So when Chris announced the King, the Queen, and the Princess, I was like, "Oh, that's." Let's give it another try. It's actually Lynn that messaged me first. Hey, it's like, hey, this is coming out. Do you want it? She sent me a picture of the princess. I was like, oh, this is cool. Okay, sign me up. And then she said that, well, these are also coming out. She sent me the picture of the king and the queen. When I saw the king, I was like, oh, this is it. I like this one. It's like a gold hammer with green tentacles. It's absolutely beautiful. And so that's why I saw that. I told Lynn's like, hey, can I actually switch it to the king after seeing that? So I ended up getting that, and it's beautiful. Blow my mind. It's probably one of my favorite hammer in the tank at the moment.
Yeah, you know, I've just never gotten into the whole the hammer coral and the torch coral stuff, and I'm probably just not any good at it, and so maybe I haven't given it a fair shot. I haven't really dug too deep in on that stuff. I'm just a stickhead at heart, and I think you know, it's the great thing about reef keeping, man, it's like you could just keep what you dig, right? That's what it's all about. It's a personal thing. So it's there's something for everybody out there, whether it's zoas, and I haven't commented about that awesome background that you got behind you there, Okay, that Zoa garden, is that from one of your tanks?
That's from the 135. I think this was maybe a year ago. This is actually the same background I used when we did the last live stream.
Well, there you go. I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, it's been a while. But yeah, from like you say, different strokes for different folks. Otherwise, everybody's reef tank's gonna be the same. And how boring would that be, right?
So let me ask you a question. You know, you talked about in terms of, you know, kind of like running and gunning and shooting videos and just kind of talking about, hey, I used aminos and this is great stuff, and then all of a sudden a few weeks later it didn't work out. Besides like amino acids, what like new method or new thing have you tried with your reef tanks that actually did? Well, I guess you talked about reef moonshiners, but you know, in terms of your methods, methodology, and in terms of keeping a reef tank, what has been some changes that you made that have stuck?
Sure. Kalkwasser. For the longest time, even during my 45-gallon cube, Jim, I call him my reef sensei, he kept preaching Kalkwasser, go Kalkwasser, go Kalkwasser. He never do a strong push because it's not like that. At least with me, he's always like, okay, I would suggest this, but if I end up going a different route, totally fine with it. So back then I was doing 2 parts. And with this tank, I finally tried Kalkwasser, and then I understood. I was like, oh, this is why you kept telling me to try Kalkwasser because of the pH bump. I never, like, I understood, I did not understand it. I heard about it, but I did not understand how important that was. So Kalkwasser is one method that stuck. And that was during the time where pH was a hot topic online, of course. Yeah. And I tried the CO2 scrubber. First, I DIY'd it. It did not really work well. I keep getting moisture inside the media chamber. That's when I just was like, all right, let me just buy some like prefabricated one. And I went to Travis' website and ordered his free printed CO2 scrubber adapter, and that worked a lot better. So right now, in terms of controlling pH, I have the Kalkwasser running at nights. I'm doing a continuous dose, I think from like 4 p.m. until like 11 a.m. And then I turned it off after 11 a.m. And I also do CO2 scrubber, recirculating CO2 scrubber. Let me make that clear, just so that I don't burn out the media too quickly. And for the media, I use the Shop Mat Vet. It's one of those non-aquarium or non-pets. Wait, it could be pet, Shop Mat Vet. But anyways, it's not one of the aquarium company ones. And it comes in a big jug. This lasts me a long time, especially since I'm using recirculating.
Gotcha. Anything else besides Kalkwasser?
Okay, let me think. So I do Kalkwasser. I also do EcoBalance, Dr. Tim's EcoBalance. Not because, or maybe it works. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But what it says makes sense. It says that, oh, this good bacteria may take up the space that the bad bacteria may take up. Basically, just occupy the space. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And let me just use. So I've been using it daily, and I have like jugs full of it as well. And yes, I also bought it.
Mike Lemming's asking, are you still using that budget bulk CO2 scrubbing media?
Yes, I've been using it, have not swapped it out, no reason to, and it is color changing and it's been doing well. My pH, one of them is always showing at about 8.25-ish. The higher one shows about 8.35-ish. I'm not sure which one to believe, but somewhere there. So I'm happy with it.
So you're doing the Kalkwasser, and what else do you besides the CO2? So I mean that's pretty good, man. I mean, so your low is what? So what would be your low, and is the high the 825, 835?
Yes, that's a high. I think low is probably, is it 0.1 swing or maybe 0.05 swing? It's a small swing simply because I dose Kalk at night.
Yeah. No, I have the same love affair with Kalkwasser. It is a beautiful thing. I do the Chris Meckley ACI method, and it works for me. You're not doing a slurry thing, are you?
Not a slurry. I'm too chicken to do it.
Yeah, me too.
And I should have tried drilling a hole and running a hose out and connect it to the skimmer intake first, but I don't know. It just scares me.
That didn't really work for me. You know, I tried that at one point. I ran a hose, but I had to run the hose like 25 feet out to a window, for my skimmer intake, and I didn't see any bump in pH when I did that. It might have just not been a big enough hose or something. I don't know.
Is your room the CO2 level is already pretty low?
That's a really good question because I never got a CO2 meter to measure what was going on in my basement. But the thing that made a big difference for me was a few years ago I had an air exchange unit installed.
I saw that
in my house, and I think that was good for a bump of a 0.2 pH points, I believe.
Nice.
Which so I being here in Vermont in the wintertime with all the windows shut tight, I run that thing pretty much from like October. And I'm still running it right now, but that's been huge for me. So, my pH ranges in both systems like 8.3 low and 8.5 high or something. So nice. It's very much elevated. And yeah, I've got so how are you dosing your Kalk water? Are you doing a Kalk stir, or are you doing like a drum method or
drum method, I guess that's what we call it. But I have a little jug.
Yeah.
So basically, I'll just mix it usually once a week, every 5 days or so. Is a 6-gallon jug. Add of RDL water. Add like 10 teaspoon of Kalk water. Mix it up. Let it settle, and just stick the hose in, and it's tied off so that it doesn't reach the bottom. That's traditional method.
That's what I do, man. It's so freaking easy. It really is. Right. You don't have to worry about stirring it up and all that stuff, and it's just I find it very simple and safe.
Yeah, same thing with the ATO. I know a couple times like Jim was like, "Hey, you can just hook it up to your RDI system, do some fail-safe and stuff," but this scares me. I just have like a small ATO container next to it. If the water runs out, like if it gets stuck on, runs out, it runs out. But yeah, different way of running system, right?
So, dude, let me ask you one last question, and then we'll wrap it. What do you have any thing on the horizon in terms of new things you want to try with the tank?
I'm setting up a new tank.
Oh, you are? Ooh,
freshwater tank.
Freshwater tank. Is this an exclusive we got going on here?
Yeah. I'm not even sure if I'll share that on YouTube or whatnot. It's just like a fun little hobby. I recently got talking to a friend about freshwater shrimp. I kept it briefly in the past, and it was okay. It's fun. But in terms of success, it was okay. They breed a little bit, but I didn't really go too far with it. But this time, I do have a what's it called ONF Flat Nano. It's one of those like small desktop lights for Planet Tank. It looks really sleek. Yeah. So I got one of those sitting around. I looked at it, and I was like, okay, freshwater shrimp, they just need like a 2.5 or 5-gallon tank, small tank. So I started looking at pictures and articles and, of course, YouTube videos. And there are some awesome tanks out there. So I got one of these like little shallow glass tank that's going to sit at a desktop. And I already ordered some black lava rock. I already got some moss right here. We got weeping moss, Christmas moss. Wow. Again, we're at the local fish store this past weekend. I saw them. I was like, let me just grab them.
Nice.
So got that set up. Probably get the tank up and running in a week or two. So that's the freshwater side. The cool. Saltwater side, I think what I want to do right now is just kind of hold the course for the 135. It's try not to rock the boat. I'm slowly dialing the light back up, which I know I'm like, oh. But I feel like the corals are really healthy right now. They seems really vibrant and really lively. It feels good. It's strange. Sometimes you look at the tank, you can tell if something is off or something is just chugging along really great. Yeah. Like you just get this, you're tuned in. So tank has been great for the last 2 weeks. The only issue is the Euphyllia is eating flatworms, but I feel like that's kind of isolated to the torches. And for the most part, that I feel like it's also addressed too. But I feel like now it's time to slowly dial the light back up a little bit. I see all the SPS have white tips started encrusting over the dead areas for the ones that survive, which is a great sign. Even on the bare rock that I thought was bare, little pieces started coming out.
Oh,
I lost a lot of the Forest 5 digitata, but there's a little chunk that just started pulling. And the Goth bonsai, what I did not mention is that there's a tiny piece that started just turned purple again, and green pulps started popping out. I'm like, oh, interesting. Looks like something survived. So we'll hold the course. We'll see how the 135 turns out. But yeah, But 135, I think the next step would be to. I was debating whether I want to add more SPS back to it because now I had to wait at least like a year and a half or 2 years ago, 2 years later, to come back on here and be like, "Hey, triumphant return, Keith, I'm back with SPS tank."
Well, dude, I'll when you're ready, I'll hook you up because you're Reefer's code, right? That's what we're gonna be doing. You're gonna be sending me a par meter. I'm gonna be sending you some frags. So no money exchange hands. No money will exchange hands.
Jim was looking at me before. I was like, "Purple monster, purple monster, purple monster." No, we're not gonna strong arm you, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, that I just need to keep growing that sucker. That
Yep.
I've been literally growing that thing for like 6 years, and it's like 3.5 inches, 4 inches. I mean, it's crazy. And I used to have that coral in my other tank years ago in Connecticut, and it grew like a weed for me. But I don't know.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that coral? I'm kind of curious because there's like an OG purple monster. And I think in the past you mentioned there's some that look similar but not quite.
So so there's a it was collected originally in the Solomon Islands, and there's a whole story behind it. And I think I've got a link on a blog post to the story behind the collection of the original Tyree purple monster. And I'm not sure how Steve's name got attached to it. I guess he might have been the first one that brought it in from the Solomon Islands, and that's why it's Steve's name is attached to it. But I do know. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it sounds like it's gonna be a long story. You have a blog post, just share it in comments. I would love to check it out. But my question, it's really in terms of looking at the coral, how can you tell whether it is that one or like?
I think a telltale sign is that there should be some white polyps, at some point in the coral. So Jake Adams, they went on an expedition with it was with Triton, and I think with Unique Corals to go try in search of the original Tyree purple monster, and they went on a collecting expedition in the Solomon Islands. And they did find something that they believe was very, very close to the original Tyree purple monster. And really the only way to tell would be DNA testing.
Oh, wow.
So that coral did make its way into the hobby, I believe, and might have been circulating around. So, I guess it's not a definitive OG Tyree purple monster. And I don't know what the differences would be potentially with that versus the one that was originally brought in by... that came through Steve's place. But so yeah, and I think there were some other really cool corals that were collected as well. And there might have been like a blue monster. So it's really cool, and that's I guess another thing in terms of the what we'll miss about Jake is those stories about the coral collection and all these awesome pieces that were that he brought to light in the hobby through Reef Builders. So hopefully somebody else will carry that torch. I know Chris Meckley is doing everything in his power to carry on Jake's legacy in that same vein. So I hope he continues to do that, and I hope others out there do the same thing.
I think as a hobbyist, I'm not speaking as a content creator, but as a hobbyist, I really miss Jake because I feel like he is the one that is not afraid to call people out, regardless of who it is. Yeah. He speaks bluntly, and that's something I really respect because maybe it has to do with the way my culture is raised up. We avoid confrontation badly. So when I see people who's not afraid to voice their opinion, which there are a few, shows I have a lot of respect for. Like even like I'm just trying to think of like Rico, right? He has a strong opinion, whether it's right or wrong. But I respect the fact that he's willing to stand his ground and speak what is mine. Same thing with Jake. And for Jake, he has knowledge to back it up as well. Yeah. So it's not just being blunt, but he actually has backings to it. And I'm scared. I'm scared what's going to happen with him gone. So I really hope, like you say, nobody can replace him. No, but at least a few, can come out and just step up. Yeah,
for sure. All right, dude. Well, listen, I know you got a family and whatnot, and we could probably chat all night long here, but I'd love to have you back on again, Mok-Yi, down the line, and hopefully we could run into each other at Reef Palooza in New York.
Yeah, we'd love to. I know we missed each other last time, but hopefully this time we can catch up.
Yeah. All right, dude. Well, listen, thanks so much, Mok-Yi. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank the sponsors for the program, both Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine. Also want to thank all you folks out there for tuning in and contributing to the chat. Some great comments and questions. Also want to give a big thank you to Paul, the moderator, who's also the president of the Boston Reefer Society. Please join and support your local reefing clubs. They are so important to this hobby. I also want to let you know little episodes of Rappin With ReefBum are available as podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Amazon. My next Rappin With ReefBum live stream will be next Thursday, May 4th at 7 p.m. with a buddy of yours there, Mok-Yi, Jim Graham, Telegram. And feel free, Mok-Yi, as was the case the last time I had Jim on, if you want to get into a little super chat war with Remy, by all means.
Yeah. Did you say May 4th? May the 4th be with you?
Yeah.
May the 4th be with you? That's a good day for it.
There you go. So I'm sure that'll be another great show with Jim.
That'll be awesome.
If you want to check out the full upcoming schedule of guests, visit reefbum.com under the YouTube section. So until then, be safe and be well, and we will see you next time.